Good. And we should be live. Hi, everyone. We've had a few technical issues this evening, and for some reason we can't get to Facebook, but we're going live on YouTube. I'm Katrina from the Association of Pet Dog Trainers, and welcome to another instalment of APDT Member Spotlight. And this evening I am joined by Gemma Fisher. Hi, Gemma.
Hello.
Thank you
Well
for
done,
being
by the way,
so patient.
No, it's fine. Honestly, Katrina, for those of you at home, she's just been brilliant because technical stuff can really throw people, but you've stayed calm and, yeah, it's good. Imagine you're very good with a very anxious dog who is struggling to settle down for the same reason.
Yeah, we've not had any problems the whole time we've been doing live streaming this year. No worries. And Gemma said you're doing really well with the technology this evening, and I was like, oh yeah, the tech's absolutely fine. And then of course
I killed it.
you
Yeah,
go live and then it doesn't work. So if anybody's watching, do you want to just say hi in the comments? Let's have a look. One person is definitely watching. Hello to anybody that is watching. Diane Fraser said hi, well done on getting this online. There she is. Thank you, Diane. Thanks for watching us and joining us. But me and Gemma will just have a chat amongst ourselves and it'll be fine.
We will.
All right. So Gemma, everyone knows about me. Why don't you tell our audience about you?
Okay, well, I actually got into dog training because of two terriers. Anybody that's ever had a terrier will probably appreciate why I got into training. And I guess I was late teens, and I just really enjoyed it. I remember going along to my first dog training class and just lapping up everything that they were telling us. And the one thing that did frighten me was, and this still sticks with me, her name was Mandy Blake. She sadly she died of cancer probably about 4 or 5 years ago. But I remember she was my first dog training teacher, and in the class she said, the most important thing that you need to be as a dog trainer is consistent. And I thought, oh no, I'm not going to be able to do this. Like, I really wanted to, but I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this. So yeah, those two terriers kind of set me off into dog training. And yeah, I quickly learned that being in like a training hall was okay, and I enjoyed it. But where I found that I really loved was in dog agility. And so we went over to dog agility, and the rest, as they say, is history. I've been enjoying dog agility with my dogs since those first two dogs. And yeah, that's kind of one of my specialities.
Excellent. And would you call yourself a crossover trainer? Like when you started all those years ago in the church hall, was it a bit like the dog training I first attended that was in a church hall that was, you did use treats, but there was also quite a bit of telling off and things like that. Would you say there was a bit of that?
Well, so I think I was quite lucky because I speak to lots of trainers who absolutely had those kind of first experiences, and I think I was really lucky. And the only and I say aversive because it wasn't massively aversive, but the one thing I do remember that we would teach a leave it. And these days I teach a leave it very differently. But in those days it was leave it in a fiercer tone as you could muster. But yeah, no, for the most part, I feel really lucky because we were doing positive reinforcement. Though one of the things that I found early on was people were getting a bit stuck with what happened when positive reinforcement didn't work. And I guess that was because, everybody was just coming out of, punishment-based stuff, and they wanted to do positive reinforcement, but it was like, okay, this is great, but as I say, what happens when the treats don't work, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we had a webinar a few months ago with Helen Zolch from Lincoln, and she was talking about actually the some of the pitfalls of incorrect positive reinforcement training, which is like a whole other topic which we could spend a lot of time on, to be honest.
Yes, absolutely.
So you had two terriers before. What dogs do you have now?
So my husband and I have 5 dogs. I brought 4 to the relationship. He just gifted me with 1. But we have 4 collies and 1 working cocker spaniel. The working cocker spaniel is keeps us on our toes. The border collies do their best to kind of keep her under control.
Round everybody up and make sure they're all behaving.
Yeah.
And did you get into collies because you got into agility and you wanted a nice fast dog? It's quite typical, isn't it, to get a collie if you're into agility?
So it certainly, when I got into agility, there were border collies everywhere, and I had always believed growing up that I wouldn't be able to have a collie. And I think that there are lots of people like this, that they think that collies are too clever, they need too much stimulation, they need too much exercise, and I was lucky enough to have friends within the agility world, and a friend had a really lovely collie, quite a stocky, well built collie, very solid in temperament. She was a really lovely, easygoing girl, and there was a repeat mating, and I did one of those things that everybody does. I was like, oh well, I'll just go and have a look, and and Kai came home, and he was just like back then. This is not what I would necessarily recommend anybody do now, but he was born on a farm in a stable on the straw. Yeah, when I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, how did we survive? But yeah, that was how I got started, and then he kind of spoiled me for all other breeds after that, really.
Yeah, I guess once you get used to the biddableness or the fast response to kind of learning stuff that keeps you on your toes, it can probably be a bit addictive having that kind of dog, can it?
There's something about the way that border collies like to be in control, and as my family would probably tell you, I'm a bit of a control freak, so we make sense to each other. We make sense, and it's not to say I don't love working with other dogs. And I do like the challenges of figuring out more complex behaviour in spaniels are a good one, because spaniels can be very complicated. Is just that, when it's the attitude to work, I think. So when I'm running an agility course with one of my border collies, it's like, oh, it's to the death. Not that I take it that seriously, but we certainly, when we're running, we're like, yeah, we're doing this. And my cocker spaniel, unless she's doing something which is her work, then it's very much like, da, 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 we're having a lovely time, and that's nice, and but as I say, the collies and I just make sense to each other, I guess.
Yeah, nice. And do you think you'd have any other breeds? Are there any breeds that you think, well, I'd quite like one of those one day?
So my friend Suzanne Clothier, who breeds German Shepherds in the States, I have said to her, if she ever wants to send, a parcel back to the UK with a German Shepherd in it, one of her German Shepherds, then I'd be up for that. But I as I say, I've tried kind of a Cocker Spaniel. I tried a Sheltie. I might go back to terriers at some point. I think there probably will come a day where I don't want to walk as far as my border collies do. And I do know of a few nice border terriers, so I could maybe see that keeps the border bit in it, doesn't it? You see?
Yeah, they're nice, hardy little things as well. They don't mind a bit of rain and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. And what made you want to become a dog trainer? When you started out in that church hall when you were training your own dogs? You were like, I'm getting the bug for this. I quite like this whole thing. Can I make this a job? Or
it wasn't so much could I make it a job, but I loved learning, and I remember asking the I'm not sure how the conversation came back. Maybe I asked her or she asked me, but I started shadowing her, and it was the opportunity not just to go to class with my own dog, but it was being able to shadow and watch other people with their dogs and things, and yeah, I love sharing, what I hope is helpful information. But yeah, I love seeing those breakthrough moments with owners where they were struggling with something, and then you make one suggestion, and then boom, they've got it, and it's a brilliant feeling to be able to help people. So so it was supporting that lady to start with, and then getting into dog agility, and then the bug was totally. I was like, everybody needs to know about this. This is brilliant. And I had a lot more energy and enthusiasm back in my early 20s as well, so that probably helped.
Excellent. And do you feel like you've had any dogs along the way that have taught you stuff?
Oh God, every single one. Okay. Every single one. So the two terriers, one of the most important lessons that they taught was about competing in sports with dogs. So I remember sitting on a start line, all of my dogs before and hopefully, to come in the future, I've always had brilliant start lines, and I left her on the start line led out to where I needed to go, and I turned back to release her, and she didn't move. She was like, nah, I don't think so. You take this a bit seriously. Not sure I want to. And like, it hurt my feelings. I'll be honest, it hurt my feelings. But it really, yeah, it really taught me a lot about, when we're doing things with the dogs, we should be doing things with the dogs and not to the dogs. And I think sometimes when we get into dog sports, we can lose focus for that little bit. And I mean, we can do that in life stuff as well. I remember working with one couple who were very social, very keen on entertaining, and they bought a little cockapoo, and they were all ready for parties to happen at their house and so on and so forth. And they had a very shy, introverted little cockapoo who didn't want all of these people coming around. So yeah, sometimes we need to kind of look at the world. Well, all of the time we should be looking at the world from the dog's point of view and seeing, how is this for you? It's one of the best questions I think you can ask a dog.
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice. And you mentioned Suzanne Clothier. Yes. Are there any trainers and behaviourists that you recommend, and why should people check them out?
Yeah, totally. So Susan Garrett had a big influence, Canadian dog trainer, had a big influence on my agility stuff, particularly. She loves her processes. So for somebody that is very detail orientated, she's a brilliant trainer to follow, and she has lots of kind of good information on her Facebook page. Suzanne Clothier, it's interesting actually that I follow both of them because they're quite different trainers. Suzanne, I mean, it's not that Susan isn't about relationship with the dogs, but Suzanne is kind of did all the dog sports, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, and yeah, her relationship focus and her kind of troubleshooting for ordinary life stuff is so valuable. So yeah, very much those two trainers. And then there's just so many trainers that I've worked with here in the UK. Jules Morgan springs to mind. She's a gun dog trainer. So for all I'm a Border Collie girl at heart, one of the things that I would say is that I think the more trainers can learn from each other and outside of the sport that they're in is really, really valuable. Jules and I found that lots of the things that they teach in the gun dog world, they call something like steadiness, for example, is what we would call start lines in agility. And yeah, there's kind of this crossover of, we teach things for, different purposes, but the exercise is kind of the same. And it's really helpful to learn from other trainers and not stay too entrenched in your own world.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually that you sort of you end up training the same sort of things for completely different breeds of dog but really for sort of the same outcome, really, yes. Which is to get a dog to do what you want within reason and be a nice, well-behaved dog, which is guessing what Jules wants for her dogs on the field. So interesting.
Yeah. So, and I think one of the things that can be nice about doing sports stuff, I was only saying to somebody that was just starting agility the other day, they were saying, oh, my dog much prefers this agility stuff to the obedient stuff. And I said, yeah, but the obedient stuff is underpinning it. They can only be brilliant at the sport that you choose if their obedient stuff is good. And I don't mean obedient stuff in terms of like, necessarily Crufts heel work obedience or anything like that. But I just mean like, when I walk into a situation with my dogs, I walk in connected. So then from connection, anything's possible. Anything's possible.
Yeah. It's not necessarily about having a dog that is a circus performer. It's just about having a dog that's like well-mannered and well-behaved, isn't it? And that's all we kind of hope for, really, with our pet dogs.
No robots. No robots.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you got any books that you recommend people read, whether it's something that you recommend owners read or trainers of the future or anything that sort of influenced you?
So, because I had a big think about this before we came online, because I've got quite a big bookshelf of books, as I'm sure lots of trainers have. And I was thinking about the ones that I pull off the shelf most regularly to talk to people about. So if people are thinking about training their dog, this is I think possibly a little known book, and it's called Playtime for Your Dog. And I think this is a brilliant book, and I recommend this all of the time. I think lots of the reasons that pet dogs misbehave or are described as naughty or, difficult or stubborn and any of those things. It's just a lot of the time they're bored. They're bored. So playtime for your dog is really nice because it comes up with activities that you can do during the day, which is stuff that you've got around the house. Some of it is almost a bit agility flavored, like, you're going to be messing about with the dog like that. There's some scent work bits and pieces in there. But it's just, rather than just what can become dull obedience stuff for the dog, this Playtime for Your Dog book is one that I recommend to, as I say, recommend all of the time. Then in terms of books for both trainers and pet owners to read, this one I really love, by Karen Pryor. It's called Reaching the Animal Mind. Now, she does have another book called Don't Shoot the Dog, and I think I've read all of her books actually, but I think this is my favourite. And the reason being is, for me, my mother says I was a why child. I was like, so why? And in this, Karen explores why. Like, why are we training animals? Why are we getting them to do things? And what are the ethics around why we're doing that? And the different ways that we are, using to get things out of animals. So it's not actually just about dogs, but it's I think it's really lovely because it kind of takes people on a journey and it's very readable. I think, unfortunately, some dog training books can be a bit hard going, and so that's a really nice book. And then this one is off the shelf all of the time, sometimes on my bedside table, because I don't know how many times I've read it, but this is Bones Would Rain from the Sky by Suzanne Clothier. Yes, this is this is the book that brought Suzanne as a friend into my life. It is a marvellous book. My online community and I read it for our book club. Was it a year or so ago? And it was really interesting as a book club book to go through it with other people and get their take on their interpretation. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that whilst I might give out dog training advice, you might interpret it in one way, somebody else might interpret it in another way. There's no, you need to stay open, I guess, is one of my takeaways from that. So, yeah, so a couple of good ones anyway, those ones.
Yeah, I've got all three of those books actually. The Playtime one, that's quite an unusual one to recommend. Not that it's a bad book, because it's not. It's a great book, but it doesn't get given the sort of the spotlight that it should. Actually, I really like that book. There's lots about sort of making things around the house in that book, isn't there? And just having fun.
And when you've got families with children, it's like the perfect book, because they love coming up with stuff to do with the dog anyway. I mean, frankly, they could probably write their own books on stuff that they could be doing. But I really like it as a, go and just mess about with the dogs. Like, let's stop training. Let's play with the dog and let's have fun, because that's what relationship is all about.
And I think I just probably wept quite a lot reading the Karen Pryor one, because it was such an emotional book for me. And if anybody else has read it, you might realise that it unlocks things in you about animals that you didn't even know you had sort of really strong feelings about. I thought it's an absolutely beautiful book, that Reaching the Animal Mind. So yeah,
it is. Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think there's something in there about hermit crabs. It's what I remember. It's quite an old book now, actually.
It is. Yeah, I read it quite some time ago. Yeah.
Fabulous. And there's been a lot in the news and in the media, and the APDT as an association are a dog training organisation that pushes kind, fair, effective training. We don't really disparage other trainers. Nevertheless, there has been quite a lot in the news about a certain trainer coming over and with abusive training methods. And I said tonight we were going to discuss, what does good dog training look like to you? And we've sort of touched on it a little bit, but I wondered if you could give your take on, what does good dog training look like?
Sure. So I think whenever I start a training session, I want to think about, what is the purpose? What am I trying to achieve? And once I've done that, then I need to go and check in to see whether or not the dog is with me in that. So I think too often, and as I say, this maybe comes from the sports stuff, is that sometimes I might start a session, for example, and I'm like, okay, I'd like to run an agility course, say, because I need the practice of running an agility course. And then I run through the agility course and my dog is struggling on the seesaw. So my objective for the session was, we're running courses, but then my dog said, hang on a minute, I'm sorry, I've kind of forgotten what we're doing on this one. Could we go through that again? So then my focus changes. Um, as I say, we did touch on it a little bit earlier. For so long, I think it's been about training the dog, and like, this is what I want you to do. I want you to stop doing this, and I need you to be able to do this in all, at all times. I think, as I say, if we can look at it from their perspective, one thing I think is important is, does the training make sense to them? So this is something that in the agility world, there's a bit of a crossover with the gun dog world, because spaniels have become very popular in the agility world. And one of the things that made me reach out actually to the gun dog world was, I don't know enough about these little people. Like what motivates them? What were they originally bred to do? So I think one of the things I'd encourage people to do is find out more about what makes your dog tick. Where are we today? We're Wednesday. So yeah, just yesterday I had I weirdly, for an agility trainer who specialises in Border Collies, I have a gun dog class. It's just one group. I don't claim to be an expert. I bring an expert in, but my group is like, please teach us gun dog stuff. So we do that. But we all just went, when this Labrador went shooting across the grass to go and retrieve this dummy, because he's doing the job he was bred to do. Like, every fibre of his being is like, it is my job, it is my duty, it is, all of that, to go and do that. And when you see dogs do the thing that they were bred to do, it changes your perspective about what training should look like, because it shouldn't be about trying to get square pegs in round holes. It should be about, okay, for example, with my Cocker Spaniel. So I want to do agility with you. Nothing intrinsically reinforcing in agility for my Cocker Spaniel. Nothing. So for my Border Collies, intrinsically reinforcing. I get to run around, I get to chase stuff. As I say, this to the death attitude about, we're working, it's really like important work. To the end of her life, Ella, my last Border Collie to pass away, she absolutely believed that we were going into every situation about to, I don't know, win the World Cup. She was convinced. Whereas my Spaniel, she doesn't feel like that about agility, and that's fine. But then I need to think about, okay, so what could I do to motivate you in other ways? And also, if you say no, I have to listen to you, and I have to believe you that in that moment you're like, no is my answer. And I am not open to negotiation on the subject. Because one of the things that I think where relationships break down is where dogs try and communicate a no, and we miss that, or we ignore that because it doesn't suit what we want to do with the dog, and then things break down. The thing, if I could get across to everybody that if they would just listen to the no early on, they could get so much further in their training. But what they tried to do is they tried to skip over that no and go, yeah, no, I'm going to keep doing what I'm going to do, and you're going to love it in a minute. Like, I'm just going to keep going, and then you'll love it in a minute. And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't work like that. I've had the greatest success I've had with dogs who are worried about exercises that I've taught them was because when they said, I don't think you've checked the health and safety on this, Gem. I think, this is not all right. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty scary, right? Should we sit and take a break? And they're like, really? Like, I thought we had to do stuff. And I'm like, no, should we go and do something else? Mm-hmm. And then actually what's really interesting, you take them back to it and they're like, I could give it a little go. Like, I could one paw on it. I could do that. Yeah, that's been my experience. That if you listen to them, then they will give you everything they've got. But you have to listen to them, and you have to learn how to listen to them as well.
Yeah. And do you have any? Do you have any thoughts on how we can push this sort of positive message out? Because I feel like if these trainers weren't popular, they wouldn't be coming over. So there's obviously some bit of the population that maybe agrees with what they do. Just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
So I think that's a tricky one, because I think without going into, politics, which is obviously a conversation for another day, I think that there is parts of the population which just, they have maybe quite a blinkered view about punishment generally. So not just for dogs, but for, human beings as well. So I think the best thing that we can do as positive reinforcement based trainers really is to show how good it works. How good it works. Gosh, that's terrible English. How well it works would be better. So I think one of the issues that that people have is that they have this view of positive reinforcement as it's just all about treats. But you can't train all dogs with treats because, not all dogs are treat motivated, or, they're too big, or they're too this, that, or the other. And I think the trouble is that, unfortunately, once you've started to have this wonderful relationship, such as I've described with a dog, and you listen to them, and you actually, I think a lot of people drop out of dog sports as a place, for example, because basically you lose ego in that process. So in an ideal world, some of the great trainers that I know, they'd go out and they'd smash, gun dog trials and agility trials and, this, that, and the other. And there are some brilliant, people in all of those sports that are doing positive reinforcement. But unfortunately, the other stuff has been there for a long time. So I think the changes is happening, and it's certainly much better than it was, say, 50 years ago. But, with all these things, it takes time, doesn't it? I guess.
Excellent. Good. And do you want to tell our viewers what you've got coming up?
Oh, yes. Yeah, would, please. So, as I've mentioned, collie specialist, because, as I say, one collie dog took my heart a very long time ago. I have a free 5-day challenge coming up, which is called Fixated to Focus, and it's a recall challenge specifically for Border Collies. One of the nice things about getting a bunch of Border Collie owners together is that it's a little bit like gathering an AA meeting, or what I imagine an AA meeting is like, because everybody sort of goes, yes, I'm a Border Collie owner and my dog chases squirrels, my dog chases, footballs, tennis balls, so it's really nice to gather people together that all have kind of similar issues, and it's a very non-judgmental space to kind of start work. And the 5-day challenge works like this. Each day they're going to get a piece of homework, and I'm going to mark that homework. They have to video their working, and they get basically access to a Border Collie specialist for a week to see if they can help improve some of that Border Collie behaviour that they're struggling with.
Brilliant. And of course, because you're an APDT member, all the methods will be kind, fair, effective, fun, and
They
motivating.
certainly will. They will. Yes, they might be high pitched and a bit excitable because, as I say, I have the agility side to my brain as well. But yes, it will be all of those things, definitely.
I forgot to ask you actually, what made you want to join the APDT all those years ago?
Thank you, showing my age. So I wanted to join because I wanted to be part of an association, and there are various dog training associations here in the UK. And I think I went round Crufts probably and kind of went around the different stands. And it's just, I think, just as our tagline is, it's the kind, fair and effective. That for me is what we should be striving for in our training. And that might look a little bit different from trainer to trainer within the APDT, but that's our fundamental, we're going to work with the dog as opposed to against the dog. So yeah, it just felt like, and has felt like that, all the time I've been a member. Not to mention just that the member group, like if you have a problem as a trainer, you tend to be working by yourself. Being self-employed can be quite a lonely thing. But yeah, we have a private members group, and I've posted in that group when I've needed a bit of moral support on a day that, things are not going well. And I know that other trainers do the same thing. And I think it's nice to have a community of people that, when we are sort of trying to turn the tide against sort of more negative punishment-based dog training, that we have like a place where we can go, this is really frustrating. This person's like come into my area and they're causing, problems, that we can all get together in a group and go, we hear you, and we're here for you as well. So
fabulous. Great. If anybody's got any questions for Gemma, please pop them in the chat. We won't keep you too late tonight because Gemma's got to go and speak to her group shortly.
Yes.
So you do group classes, private one-to-one training in the North Somerset area. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
And
correct.
you've got an online training academy. Do you want to tell people a little bit about that as well, if they're
Yes.
somewhere else in the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in actual fact, I've got people in the States and Australia in there. So yeah, it's very exciting. Yeah, the academy group. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. My academy group is people that I've taught in person, as well as people from further afield. I've gathered up people in Northern Ireland, for example, that are in the group. There's people up north in Wigan, and it's essentially the online academy is access to my brain because I remember one morning doing a group, a set of one-to-ones, and by the end of the morning, I was getting really concerned that I was repeating myself, and I was like, "Have I said this to someone before?" And basically repeating it to the same client, and it wasn't. It was just that when you are starting on your dog training journey, the information is very similar, and fortunately, I love the sound of my own voice. So putting it on camera wasn't too much of a big deal from my perspective. And now people can have access to my brain to get themselves kind of started off and yeah, on their dog training journey.
Perfect. And your website is?
Oh, it's gemmafisher.com. Nice and easy.
Perfect. Excellent. Have you got any final thoughts or anything else you'd like to tell the audience about?
Well, let me tell you the story of a golden retriever friend of mine then, just to finish off, because it goes to what makes a good training session. So this golden retriever friend of mine is sadly no longer with us. She's a very precious girl, but yeah, she passed away a couple of years ago. So she came to me in a one-to-one session with her dad, Michael, who became a very good friend. And Michael was trying to teach Poppy to do agility. Now I've said golden retriever, so maybe not what you would naturally think of as a agility dog. Now she was enjoying it very much because there was lots of food on offer, and Poppy did love her food. But the one sticking point they were having was they were going to a club training, and the seesaw, as far as Poppy was concerned, was the most dangerous piece of apparatus she'd ever seen in her life. Thank you very much. And yeah, did not want to put one foot on it. So we started work on it, and I have a series, I think it's about 17 or 18 games that I break the seesaw training into. Like you can break it into a lot of pieces. And we were going through the different bits, and Poppy had got to the point where if I put the seesaw at a particular angle, she could put her feet on it. All right. So that was like quite big progress for her. And unfortunately, she returned to the club training that she'd been doing between our one-to-ones. And while she was there, a trainer said to Michael, "Oh, this is so silly. She can absolutely do this." So they took Poppy by the collar and they took her up and over the seesaw several times through that session. So when I saw Poppy the next time, Poppy said, "Absolutely on no condition am I going on this seesaw. Absolutely not. No." And I couldn't understand it because we'd made such good progress. And so I chatted to Michael and he explained what had happened. And I was like, "Oh, okay. All right." So for that session, we had the seesaw stuff out, but we went, "Do you know what? I know you like tunnels." And we did tunnels. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, by the end of her life, she was quite a poorly dog. She had a few health conditions at the end. But the very last time that I saw her in the agility setting, she had actually just come down to sort of enjoy the company of the other dogs at a training session. She was actually at that point very lethargic and she didn't really want to do very much. But just at the end of the session, Michael's getting ready to go, and Poppy gets up and she gives me a look, and there's an invitation in her look, and she said, like she's like racing, and I'm like, "What do you want to do? And she dashes over to the seesaw, and she does a full seesaw, and she didn't need to do a full seesaw, but she and I had this fun doing the seesaw, learning how to do it in a safe way that Poppy deemed safe. And it is one of the dog training memories that will always stick with me. Yes, it's an agility example, but it goes for anything that a dog might be trying to overcome, that if we listen to them, then yeah, anything is possible, and we really should listen to them because it's important. It's important, and we get much more out of them.
Oh, yeah, that's a really lovely story. I'm sure there are many people that were listening to that story thinking, oh, yeah, I remember doing a seesaw with my dog like that, or the dog walk. I remember
Yeah.
2 people with a lead on the dog, walking the dog along the dog
I
walk.
think, unfortunately, people are still doing it at
I'm
times.
sure they
And
are.
essentially, at that point, the dog has 2 choices. Like, either they get over it or they go, hell no, not doing that ever again. So, yeah. And the trouble is that whilst dogs will go, oh, okay, I can get over this, then people will keep doing it. So, but there are better ways. There are better ways.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you to the people that have joined us. This is on YouTube. We'll put the recording up on Facebook as well, so that people that were trying to watch it on Facebook couldn't see it. I'm sorry. We'll try harder next time. But thank you so much for coming on, Gemma.
No, not at all. It's been great fun, and thank you everybody for coming over to YouTube when, as I say, Facebook was playing silly buggers. Patrina absolutely did her best. I can definitely vouch for her.
I don't know what went wrong. Thanks to everyone. I will see you next month on our next member spotlight. Thank you all. Thank you, Gemma.
Bye.